They told me I was dead, buried, mourned, forgotten, but I was still breathing, trapped in a hospital bed, face burned, voice gone, identity erased. And when I finally escaped, I saw them, laughing, toasting to a life that used to be mine. My husband, my best friend, my name on the tombstone. They thought they buried me, but I'm not here to haunt them. I'm here to take everything back. I still remember the exact moment, the flicker of candlelight, the weight of my wine glass in my hand, the soft murmur of laughter just beyond the corridor. I wasn't supposed to be there yet. I'd gone back into the guest house to grab a sketchbook I'd forgotten in my tote bag. Something insignificant, mundane, until it wasn't. That night changed everything. The backyard was dim, the fire pit still glowing from earlier conversations. Most of the guests had moved inside for dessert. Daniel wasn't among them, and neither was Lena. I should have known, should have felt it. That odd silence you hear just before a storm. When I opened the side door to the house, I heard her laugh first. Lena's laugh like careless familiar in a way that made my skin itch. Then, his voice low and hushed, followed by the soft clink of a wine bottle against crystal. I froze right in the hall behind the sliding pantry door. I didn't mean to hide. I didn't even think. I just stood there. And then I saw it. Through the half-open kitchen door, their bodies pressed too close for any rational excuse. His hand was on the small of her back. Her fingers toyed with his tie, slowly, with intention. She leaned in, whispered something, and he smiled. That stupid, charming smile he used to give me before our Sunday morning coffee. The one that said, "You're the only one in the world." I couldn't breathe. The air turned thick like syrup in my lungs. I stepped back, but the floor creaked. Just slightly. Enough. Lena turned her head, our eyes met for the briefest second. And that second burned. She didn't flinch, didn't look ashamed. She smirked. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a drunken lapse. It was intentional. I walked away. Back in the guest house, my fingers trembled as I closed the door behind me. I didn't cry. Not yet. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the glass of the vanity. I looked fine, not broken, not betrayed, just still. But inside me something splintered. Let me explain something about Lena and me. We weren't always at odds. When we were little, we used to share everything. Bedtime secrets, candy bars, dreams about getting out of our dead-end town. But that changed the day we turned 16. The day I was adopted and she wasn't. It wasn't my choice. Mrs. Grant had said she could only take in one. I didn't know Lena overheard the conversation I had with her that night. I didn't know she heard me say I can't live with my mother anymore. Please, just me. I didn't know she would carry that with her for the next 20 years. Until now. The rest of the party was a blur. I walked back in acting as if nothing had happened. I smiled at Mrs. Grant when she asked about my sketches. I kissed Daniel on the cheek when he handed me a glass of wine like nothing was wrong. Because now I needed to know everything. I needed to understand how long, how deep, how twisted this betrayal ran. And I needed time. You see, I've never been the type to scream or throw things. I don't go for slaps or dramatic exits. That kind of anger, it fades. No, I am much more dangerous than that. I believe in silence. That night, after the guests had gone, Daniel crawled into bed beside me. He smelled like cologne and guilt. He kissed my shoulder. "I missed you tonight," he said softly. I smiled in the dark. I'm here now. He wrapped his arm around me, his breath warm on my neck. And I lay there wide awake, counting every heartbeat, every lie, every piece of my life that suddenly felt staged, scripted. I thought about Lena, her smug little smirk, her perfectly painted lips whispering secrets into the man I married. I thought about all the years I defended her when people said she was manipulative, selfish, cold. I thought about the Thanksgiving when she cried in my lap. because her boyfriend cheated, how I held her comforted her. The irony nearly choked me. But here's the truth. No one tells you about betrayal. It's not just about the act. It's about the undoing of reality. About learning that the two people you trusted most, the man you shared your bed with, and the woman you called your sister, had been playing you like a background character in your own life. They thought I wouldn't notice, that I'd stay soft, that I'd be Emma, the calm one, the reasonable one, the one who never fights back. They were wrong. The next morning, I made pancakes. Banana with cinnamon, Daniel's favourite. I even sprinkled powdered sugar just like he liked it. He kissed my cheek, smiled, told me I was the best. And when Lena came over to help with the charity brunch we were hosting next week, I greeted her with a warm hug. "How's my big sister?" I asked, resting my head on her shoulder. Her body stiffened for just a second. Just enough, let them think I'm clueless. Let them believe I'm too gentle to strike back. 'Cause the thing is, I'm not out for blood. I want something deeper. I want them to look at me every day and wonder, does she know? And when the answer is yes, I want them to realize too late that I've already started unraveling everything they've ever built. From the inside, there's something about old houses that holds on to memories. When we were kids, Lena and I used to race through our mother's kitchen, barefoot, giggling over spilled cereal and broken plates. That house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, cracked linoleum floors, was our whole world. Back then, we didn't know we were poor. We just knew how to survive. Lena was the wild one, always running faster, climbing higher, laughing louder. I was the quiet one, the watcher. I think that's what made us work her fire, my stillness. Until it didn't. I was 10 the first time I noticed the shift. It was summer. Our mom hadn't come home for 2 nights. Lena kept saying she was probably just out with a friend, but I saw the fear in her eyes. She was 12 already, learning how to lie with a straight face. I made us mac and cheese and read Lena, the comic strips from the back of the newspaper. That night, we slept in our clothes, door-locked, lights on. It wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Mrs. Grant came into our lives the following year. She was our neighbour, stern, elegant, always carrying fresh roses from her garden, like a movie character out of another life. When our mum got arrested for the second time for shoplifting cold medicine and bourbon, Mrs. Grant stepped in. Not out of kindness, out of necessity. Those girls will rot if someone doesn't do something, she told the social worker. She wasn't wrong. They only had space for one. I remember sitting on that floral couch in Mrs. Grant's parlour, feet dangling above the floor. The social worker asked us which of us wanted to go. Lena looked at me wide-eyed. She waited. I should have said we'd both stay. I should have said we'd run. But I didn't. "I'll go," I whispered. I still remember the way Lena's face broke, like something in her cracked. Years passed. Mrs. Grant enrolled me in private school. Ballet lessons, debate club. Lena stayed in the public system, bounced between foster homes and our grandmother's house. We saw each other on weekends sometimes. But something between us had changed. The hugs got shorter, the silence longer, and one night in the bathroom of Mrs. Grant's house, I overheard her on the phone. "She always gets what she wants," Lena hissed. "Emma's the perfect little charity case. And me, I'm the reminder of what she wants to forget." I never told her I heard. I thought it would pass. It didn't. Years later, at my wedding, Lena stood by my side in navy blue chiffon, a bridesmaid. Smile painted perfectly across her lips. Daniel shook her hand like a brother. She hugged him like one too. A little too long, maybe. But I was in love. I was blind. That night, she gave a toast that made everyone laugh. To Emma, she said, "May you always get what you deserve." The crowd clapped. Only I caught the sharpness in her smile. Now, standing in Mrs. Grant's kitchen again, pouring coffee into matching mugs, I feel the echoes of all those old ghosts pressing against the walls. Lena sits at the table, scrolling through her phone like nothing's changed. "Remember when Mom locked herself out of the house and tried to break in through the bathroom window?" I asked casually. She glances up, smirking. She was high, thought she was being chased by raccoons. I laugh, but it's hollow. She had good days too, though, I offer, when she was sober. Lena sets her phone down, eyes meeting mine. You always tried to find the good in everything, even in her. She was still our mother. Her voice is sharp cold, because the day you left, she stopped being mine. A beat of silence passes. There it is again, that bitterness. That undercurrent of something unspoken and sharp between us. But I don't take the bait. I'm sorry, I say instead. Lena blinks. For what she asks, like, the words don't make sense. For leaving, for not fighting harder. I didn't realize then what I was doing to you. Her lip twitches, a flicker of something surprise, sadness. It's gone before I can name it. Don't get all sentimental, Em. We turned out fine. But her voice cracks on that last word. We don't speak again for a while. She helps clean out the old attic. Mrs. Grant wants to convert it into an art studio for me. Lena lifts the old boxes like she's punishing them. I find a faded yearbook, a photo of us at the community pool, arms slung around each other like nothing could ever come between us. I slip the photo into my pocket. That night, I sit on the edge of my bed, staring at it in the dim light. I wonder how we got here. How did we go from sisters in bunk beds to strangers under the same roof? I want to believe there's still a piece of the old Lena inside her, the girl who braided my hair, who snuck candy into movie nights, who cried when I got my first period, because she thought something was really wrong with me. But maybe that girl died the night I left. Maybe I killed her. Still, I'm not angry. Not yet. I'm something worse. I'm focused. They say revenge is cold, but I've learned something colder. Reflection. Because it doesn't come from fury. It comes from silence. From knowing someone better than they know themselves. From waiting. Watching. Choosing the exact moment when your enemy thinks they've won. To remind them they never even knew the rules. And Lena, she thinks this is still a game of sisterhood. She hasn't realized yet I'm no longer playing. You'd be surprised how easy it is to play the fool. All you need is a steady smile, a soft voice, and a carefully placed laugh. People will believe anything when you look like you've got nothing to hide. That's how I spent the next few weeks smiling. Smiling through brunches, meetings, garden parties, wine tastings. I was the devoted wife, the thoughtful sister, the woman who had it all. But behind every "How was your day, honey?" and every "I'm so lucky to have you," I was building something. Quietly, precisely, brick by brick. The first part of any good revenge isn't fury, it's research. I started with Daniel. He had patterns. He left for work at 7:15 a.m. sharp, came home at 6:40, drank scotch on Tuesdays, called his assistant Brittany when her name was actually Brielle, thought I didn't notice. I began checking his phone not physically, that would be reckless. No. I synced his iCloud calendar to my laptop. The man never logged out of anything. He trusted me. Still saw me as the same woman who cried during ASPCA commercials and couldn't remember how to update the Wi-Fi router. That worked in my favour. He had a private folder labelled meeting notes. D inside were spreadsheets, proposals, NDA documents, and 2 invoices paid to LM Consulting. LM, Lena Matthews, smart girl, using a shell company to funnel payments from Daniel's business account. Payments labelled as Creative Strategy and Partnership Development. I almost laughed. Lena had a degree in marketing, sure, but strategy. The only thing she ever strategized was how to manipulate people into doing what she wanted. And apparently, Daniel had fallen for it professionally, personally, financially. The payments were monthly, regular, began 6 months ago. That's how far back this went? 6 months of lies. 6 months of dinners where she sat across from me drinking my wine, smiling at my stories while sleeping with my husband. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I started taking notes. Then there was Lena. She was harder to read. She always had been. But patterns leave traces even for her. She visited Daniel's office every Friday afternoon, brought him notes or client briefs depending on who asked. She never stayed long, never left digital trails. No texts, no emails, only face-to-face. Smart, but not smarter than me. I followed her one Friday. I waited in my car across the street, tinted windows, up sunglasses on cold brew in hand like any suburban wife on a day off. She arrived at 3:15. Left at 3:42. 27 minutes. enough time to talk, enough time to do a lot more than that. That night, I told Daniel I was thinking of starting therapy again. Said I'd been feeling disconnected lately. His response: he poured me wine, told me I deserved self-care. Then he kissed me on the forehead like I was a child. I smiled. God, I smiled so sweetly. I did go to therapy, but not for healing, for strategy. My therapist, Dr. Wren, was a specialist in narcissistic abuse and emotional detachment. I told her everything except the affair. I told her I felt invisible in my marriage. She listened, gave me language, tools. She had no idea she was helping me sharpen a blade. I began changing little things at home, subtle things. I stopped folding Daniel's shirts the way he liked. I changed the alarm passcode. I switched his scotch with a cheaper brand one he'd never drink if he noticed. He didn't notice. That told me more than any confrontation ever could. He wasn't watching me. He didn't see me anymore. One morning while he was showering, I opened his briefcase. Not to take anything, just to look. Inside was a photo of us from our honeymoon. Paris. I had forgotten we even had that one printed. I stared at it. We looked so happy. Or maybe just well lit. I wondered if he missed me at all. Then I realised I didn't care. The final part of the mask was rebuilding my image publicly. I rejoined the City Architecture Board. I started hosting fundraisers for historic preservation. I spoke at local colleges about building beauty through resilience. The press started noticing. Daniel did not, but Lena did. One afternoon, she stopped by with iced coffee. "You've been glowing lately," she said. I took the drink, smiled. "Have I?" She nodded. "New skincare." Something like that. We sat on the back patio watching the leaves stir in the wind. I asked her about her consulting work. She gave vague answers. I asked about dating. She lied easily. Then casually I said, "Sometimes I think about our mom. Do you ever miss her?" Lena went still. She always did, when she didn't know what I was really asking. She took a sip from her drink. "No, I think some things are better buried." I said, and I let the silence hang. When she left, I tossed the drink down the sink. I wasn't stupid. I'd seen her pour 2 packets of stevia in mine, even though I hated sweet coffee. A small reminder that she still thought she was in control, still thought I was blind. Let her. Let them both believe they had the upper hand. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was a performance. And the curtain had only just begun to rise. It was the mirror in Mrs. Grant's hallway that finally cracked me. Not literally, just inside. It's tall, antique framed in dark cherry wood, with a faded brass trim, something she picked up in Italy during her brief wild years after turning 60. It stood in the corner near the staircase, quiet and honest, catching everything you tried to hide when you weren't paying attention. I passed it 100 times growing up, but that day on my way to return some design samples to her studio, I stopped. I don't know why. Maybe it was the light, or maybe it was the weight of everything I'd been carrying, wearing like a second skin. The smile, the softness, the control. I looked at myself and saw someone I didn't quite recognize anymore. Not because she looked older, not because the circles under her eyes were darker or her mouth didn't curve the way it used to. No, it was the stillness in her face, the calculated calm. I sat down on the hallway bench and let my body truly rest for the first time in weeks. And I whispered, was it really all their fault? There it was. The question, the one I'd been avoiding. Because underneath the betrayal, underneath the plan, there was something else. Something I didn't want to name. Guilt. I had buried it so well. I had dressed it up in justifications, wrapped it in childhood wounds and adult heartbreak. But it was still there. A story I'd never told anyone, not even myself. It happened the night before Mrs. Grant agreed to take one of us. Our mother was passed out on the floor again, vodka on her breath, a cigarette still burning near the edge of the carpet. Lena had tucked me in early like always. She was already used to being the grown-up, already used to carrying both of us. But that night I stayed awake. I crept into the kitchen and picked up the phone. I called Mrs. Grant myself. I told her things, exaggerated things. I said Lena had started smoking, stealing, sneaking out. None of it was true. I just wanted to be saved. The next day, the social worker told us the state could only fund one placement. Mrs. Grant chose me. Of course she did. She thought she was rescuing the good sister. The safe one. and I let her believe that. I never told Lena. Never told anyone. Now, 20 years later, that lie echoed through every room I walked in, every smile I faked, every time I called her sis. What if this wasn't just her revenge? What if all of this Daniel, the affair, the business partnership, was her way of saying, you took everything? Now, I'll take it back. I stood up from the bench and walked to the kitchen. Mrs. Grant was there making tea, her long silver hair pinned into its usual twist. "You're early," she said, handing me a mug. "You okay?" I nodded, then shook my head. "I need to ask you something." She raised an eyebrow. "Did you ever know what I did?" I asked back then, about the things I said about Lena. Mrs. Grant didn't look surprised. She stirred her tea slowly, thoughtfully. Then she said, "I suspected." I blinked. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you were a child trying to survive," she said. "And Lena? She was fire. You were drowning. I picked the one I thought I could protect." I stared at her, stunned. "You still talk to her like she's dangerous," I said. "She is," Mrs. Grant said softly. "But maybe not in the way you think." That night back home I couldn't sleep. Daniel was away on a business trip, a lie I let him keep. Lena texted me a picture of us from high school, captioned, "We used to be everything to each other." I stared at the photo. Two girls in denim jackets holding cherry slushies, laughing like idiots on the hood of some borrowed car. We looked invincible. I wanted to scream at that version of us, "Don't believe it. None of this lasts." Instead, I typed back, "Do you remember that night you slept on the porch because Mom locked the door?" She replied a few minutes later, "Yeah, I thought I'd freeze to death." "You brought me a blanket? Then why are you bringing this up?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Or maybe I did. Maybe part of me still wanted to reach her, to undo whatever this had become between us. But that part of me was drowning now in something colder than guilt. "Resolve it." In the morning, I called my lawyer. "I want to separate the finances," I said. "New accounts." Quietly. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Of course." Then I called an old friend, Trevor Whitman, former journalist, now private investigator. I told him to look into LM Consulting. "Dig deep," I said. "Offshore affiliate links, tax records, anything that can legally hurt them. I want leverage." His voice paused on the line. "Emma, are you sure?" I looked out the window at the garden Daniel and I built together 5 summers ago. "Yes," I said. "I'm not looking to fight. I'm looking to win." And in the back of my mind, a voice whispered, "Even monsters bleed. Betrayal makes people sloppy." That's what Trevor said when he called me 3 days after I hired him. He sounded almost apologetic, like the truth was too obvious to be interesting. "Your sister's company is a shell," he said. "No employees, no office, just her name and a virtual address in Delaware. And the payments I asked, personal. Daniel's been wiring them from a shadow fund connected to his business. Technically illegal, definitely unethical." I felt my pulse slow, not rise. This was confirmation, not surprise. Trevor kept talking. I only half listened. I already knew what I was going to do. That week, I invited Lena over for dinner. I made her favourite grilled salmon with citrus glaze, roasted asparagus, garlic, mashed potatoes. I lit candles, played Billie Holiday on vinyl, poured her a glass of red wine with a knowing smirk. She looked suspicious. "You cooking for me? Either someone's dying or you're pregnant." I laughed. "Neither. I've just missed you." She raised an eyebrow. "Is this some kind of weird peace offering?" "Maybe." She sat down slowly, cautiously, like a wolf unsure of the trap. "Good." We ate. We drank. We laughed, forced, hollow laughs. She told me about a client who refused to pay until she threatened legal action. I told her I'd been painting again. Neither of us believed the other. And then I dropped the bait. "I've been thinking about partnering with a consultant," I said, casually swirling my wine, "for one of my firm's projects." Lena froze for half a second. Just enough. "Oh, yeah. Someone who understands development strategy. You know anyone?" She smiled too fast. "Well, you could always consider me." "Could I?" I said. "But isn't that a conflict of interest, given everything?" She blinked. "What? Everything?" I leaned in, whispered. "Come on, Lena. We're grown women. I'm not stupid." She didn't move, didn't speak. I pulled back and smiled. "I just want us to be transparent." She laughed nervously, of course. That night, she sent Daniel a message. I knew because I'd already cloned her phone. It said, "She knows. Be careful." He didn't reply. 2 days later, Daniel came home late. His tie was loose. His eyes were tired. He kissed me on the cheek and went straight to the bar. "Rough day?" I asked. He nodded. "Investors are getting nervous." "Nervous about what?" He paused, measured. "We're getting audited." I nodded, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That must be stressful. He looked at me for a moment too long. Then he said, "Emma, have you been talking to anyone about the company?" My smile didn't waver. "I talk to lots of people, Daniel. Why?" He opened his mouth, closed it, shook his head. "Never mind." But I saw it. The first crack. The audit wasn't real. I'd arranged it. Through a contact at the city's Business Affairs Bureau, I requested a citizen-initiated compliance review on Carter & Co.'s financial structuring. Just a suggestion. Enough to stir questions. Enough to make Daniel sweat. And Lena, I let her sweat too. I had Trevor email her anonymously, posing as a potential client. A big client. A lucrative contract with vague terms and one request. Send over proof of licensing, tax ID, and your team's bios. She replied with 3 PDFs, each one faked. Trevor forwarded them to me. I sent them anonymously to the client Lena had boasted about landing last week. A non-profit known for cutting ties at the first whiff of scandal. 3 days later, Lena lost the contract. She came over unannounced, stormed into my kitchen, with mascara smudged and fire in her eyes. "Did you tell them something?" she spat. I looked up from my tea, all innocence. "Tell who what? Don't play dumb, Emma. This was you." I set down my mug. "Are you saying I sabotaged your business, Lena?" She stared at me, and for the first time in years, she looked scared. She didn't stay for coffee. Later that night, I found Daniel in the garage sitting in the car with the radio off. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. "Lena thinks you're coming after us." I tilted my head. "Why would she think that?" He stood up. "Because contracts are vanishing. My books are under review. My investors are panicking." "Sounds like you have a problem," I said softly. He walked toward me, slow calculating. "Emma, what are you doing?" "I'm hosting brunch this Saturday," I replied. "You should invite your mother." He stopped. "You're not answering the question." I smiled. "Maybe you're not asking the right one." That night I dreamed I was standing on a bridge watching Daniel and Lena drown in the river below. They screamed for me. I didn't move. I just watched the water pull them under, slowly, painfully, until only bubbles remained. I woke up feeling rested. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. This was about reclaiming reality. They thought I was the one unraveling, but in truth, I was rebuilding. There's a moment right before everything collapses when people still believe they can fix it. Daniel was in that moment. Every morning he left earlier. Every night he came home later. His texts became shorter, more clipped. He paced through rooms like they were unfamiliar. He kissed me on the forehead like a prayer, not a greeting. I let him pretend it wasn't happening, because I knew exactly when the fall would begin, and I made sure I was the one who pushed it. It started on a Thursday. He was in a boardroom in downtown Charleston, trying to calm 3 angry investors and 1 very smug city inspector. I know, because I sent them the files myself. Nothing illegal, just enough inconsistencies, enough unpaid invoices, falsified contracts, enough breadcrumbs to warrant concern, enough to question his partnership with LM Consulting. And just like that, Carter & Co. wasn't a rising firm anymore. It was a liability. He came home that night with a busted lip and silence stitched into his jaw. "What happened?" I asked, feigning concern. He stared at me for a beat too long. "Ran into a door." I almost laughed. Even now he thought he could protect his pride with lies. "Dinner's in the oven," I said. He didn't touch it. The next day, Lena showed up drunk at 10 a.m. She banged on my door barefoot with mascara running down her cheeks like war paint. I opened it slowly. She shoved a manila envelope into my hands. "You did this," she hissed. Inside were screenshots, emails, her contract termination letter. I flipped through them, calmly. "You should be more careful with your licensing," I said. "You think this makes you powerful?" she snapped. "You think destroying me will fix what you broke?" "I didn't destroy you," I said, stepping closer. "You did that yourself. All I did was stop protecting you." Lena stared at me, stunned. Then, for the first time in our adult lives, she slapped me. It wasn't theatrical, it was real, raw, ugly. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just smiled. She left screaming. I shut the door, then leaned against it and let myself shake. Because the truth is, even when they deserve it, hurting someone you once loved still hurts. Even when it's justified, even when it's planned. There are no clean victories in family wars. That night, Daniel finally confronted me. I was in the garden, trimming back the lavender. He stood behind me quiet until he wasn't. I want to know what you've done. I didn't turn around. Be specific. My company is collapsing, he said, voice tight. My name is being dragged through the mud. Lena lost her clients. You think I don't see it? I clipped another stalk of lavender. Maybe it's karma. He stepped closer. This isn't karma. This is you. I turned then, met his eyes. You cheated on me. With my sister for 6 months. You paid her with stolen funds. Lied to me every day. He opened his mouth. I held up my hand. Don't insult me with explanations. Silence. Then he said quietly, I thought you didn't know. That was your first mistake, I replied, assuming I was still the woman you married. He looked away. I never meant to hurt you. A tired phrase, overused, hollow. You didn't hurt me, I said softly. You freed me. His jaw clenched. So what now? I shrugged. That depends on you. The next morning, I filed for financial separation. Not divorce. Not yet. Let him twist a little longer. Let him wonder what was coming next. Meanwhile, Lena disappeared. No texts, no calls, no passive-aggressive memes on Instagram. Gone. Mrs. Grant called me 2 days later, worried. She's not answering. Should I be worried? She'll resurface, I said. She always does. But even I wasn't sure this time. Because despite everything, she was my sister. She was still the girl who used to hold my hand under the blankets when we were scared. The one who carried me on her back when I scraped my knee in 4th grade. Revenge had a price, and I was starting to wonder if I'd underestimated it. Then came the twist I didn't expect. Trevor called again. You might want to sit down for this. I didn't. He said, Your sister, she's been siphoning money from Daniel's business for longer than we thought. Longer than he knew. I frowned, explained. She wasn't just taking payments. She was rerouting funds, hundreds of thousands, through another shell under a third-party name. The owner. He paused. I waited. Her ex. The one who cheated on her. The one you comforted her about. I blinked. So, she was conning Daniel while sleeping with him. She was conning both of you, Trevor said. This wasn't revenge. This was strategy. Long-term, cold. I sat down finally, and for the first time since this began, I felt something new. Fear. Not because I couldn't win, but because I just realized Lena wasn't playing checkers. She was playing chess, and I had underestimated her. The box was buried beneath old sweaters and outdated tax returns in the back of the linen closet at Mrs. Grant's lake house. I wasn't looking for it. I had come up here to breathe, to get away from Daniel's pacing the hollow ring of Lena's silence, the thudding echo of my own thoughts. The lake always helped. Quiet, isolated, honest. But the box found me anyway. It was pink, lined with old stickers, and glittered tape like something from a middle school diary. I recognised Lena's handwriting, instantly looping careless, confident. The lid creaked open, like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to me. Emma, I hate you. And I love you. And I don't know which feeling is worse. That was the first line of the first one. I sat down on the old couch by the fireplace, the sun leaking through the shutters like soft regret, and I read every word. The letters were dated, some as far back as high school, others as recent as 2 years ago. None of them had ever been sent. You were always her favourite. Even when I tried harder, even when I smiled wider, you got the good version of Mrs. Grant. I got her warnings and her silences. I slept outside that night not because the door was locked, because I wanted to see if you'd come get me. You did. But not because you loved me. Because you felt guilty. That's not the same. Daniel was a mistake. A big one. But it was the first time in years someone looked at me the way people always look at you. I stopped there, stared at the page until the words blurred. She knew it was wrong. She knew. And still did it anyway. But buried in the spite there was something raw. something that sounded less like anger and more like hunger, like a girl trying to fill a void that had been carved too early, too deep. I kept reading. I don't want to destroy you. Not really. I just want to be free of you, of the comparison, the shadow. I want to know who I am without your reflection everywhere I go. I think part of me still loves you, but it's the kind of love that cuts you open just to see if you'll bleed. That one hit me hardest, because I understood it more than I wanted to admit. All my life, I thought Lena hated me for being the chosen one, but maybe she hated herself for letting me win, and maybe I hated myself for never letting her forget it. I folded the last letter carefully, then just sat there for hours. The fire died, the shadows lengthened. Still, I didn't move, because for the first time since this all began, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. I had thought revenge would heal something, that if I made them suffer, it would cancel the ache. But all it had done was uncover more rot, more lies, more us. Later that night, I stood on the dock in my sweater and bare feet, the lake still and black beneath a canopy of stars. I thought about throwing the letters in, letting them sink, letting them disappear like everything else between us. But I didn't. I held them close. Because somewhere in all that brokenness, all that pain was the truth. Not the kind you shout in a courtroom, but the kind that haunts you in your dreams. The next morning I drove back to the city, parked outside Lena's apartment, waited. When she came out, sunglasses on, hood up, I stepped from my car. She froze. I didn't speak, just held out the box. She took it with trembling hands. Didn't open it. Didn't look at me. Just whispered, "Why now?" I shrugged. Because I needed to read it before I stopped hating you. Her eyes filled. Then, for the first time in years, she said, "I'm tired, Em." I nodded. Me too. She walked away without another word. That night, Daniel came home to an empty bedroom. Just a note on the pillow. "I know everything, and I forgive nothing. Forgiveness is overrated. Sometimes, the most honest thing you can offer is space." But the game wasn't over. Not yet. Because while the heart may shift, the mind still remembers. And I still had one more move to make. It was a Sunday. Bright. Beautiful. Quiet in that way cities sometimes get just before they explode. I chose Mrs. Grant's house for the gathering. Neutral ground, familiar ground, the kind of place where people assumed the best things happened. Birthday cakes, childhood whispers, stories around the fireplace. I told Daniel it was a family talk. Told Lena it was important. Told Mrs. Grant to simply be there and to keep an open mind. No one knew what was coming, except me. We sat around the dining table. Lena on my left, Daniel across from me. Mrs. Grant at the head, stirring her tea slowly like a judge preparing for a verdict she already suspects. The sunlight cut through the stained glass window, casting coloured shadows over the mahogany table. It looked like a holy place. It was anything but. "I want to tell the truth," I began. Daniel shifted. Lena crossed her arms. Mrs. Grant raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "I've spent the past 2 months pretending I didn't know what the two of you were doing." I looked from Daniel to Lena. Neither flinched. So I went on. "I knew about the affair, about the consulting scam, the offshore transfers, all of it." Daniel finally looked away. Lena stared at me, her face unreadable. I reached into my bag, pulled out the file folder, dropped it on the table. It landed like a gavel. Inside, bank records, screenshots, printed emails, falsified documents. Trevor had done excellent work. "You've both been lying. To me, to each other, and to yourselves." Silence. The kind that stretches too long and pulls tight like a noose. Lena was the first to speak. "I never wanted this." "Then why take it?" I asked. "Why him?" Her eyes gleamed, but her voice was steady. "Because he was yours." And for once, I wanted to take something back. Mrs. Grant let out a slow breath like a prayer escaping. Daniel cleared his throat. "She manipulated me," Lena scoffed. "Oh, please." "She did," Daniel snapped. "She planned this from the start. And you didn't stop it," I said coldly. "You welcomed it." His jaw clenched. "She made me feel wanted," he said. "And I didn't," I asked. He paused. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." The silence returned. And then I said the thing I hadn't planned to say. The thing that wasn't in my script. The thing that hurt the most. I wasn't innocent either. They both looked up. "I lied when we were kids. I told Mrs. Grant you were trouble, Lena. I wanted out. I threw you under the bus to save myself. Mrs. Grant's teacup stopped halfway to her lips. I knew it, Lena whispered. Tears welled not from pain but recognition. I hated you for so long, she said, but I never really knew why. And now, I asked. I still hate you, she said, but now I hate myself more. Daniel stood up. I'm not doing this. No, I said. You're not walking away this time. I pulled out the final card, a signed affidavit from a whistleblower, one of Daniel's junior accountants confirming the illegal fund movements. I could take this to the authorities. He paled. But I won't, I added, because I don't need to destroy you. I stood too. You've already done that to yourself. I turned to Lena. I won't ruin you either. She narrowed her eyes. Why not? Because, for once, I said I want the last memory you have of me, to be choosing not to finish you. I walked out then, left them in that sunlit room with their guilt and their choices and their silence. Mrs. Grant followed me to the door. She didn't speak. She just hugged me tighter than she had in years. Outside, the sky was overcast, soft, still, like a clean slate. I didn't feel triumphant, or even free, but I felt finished, and that was enough. Because revenge isn't about winning, it's about release. And sometimes the sharpest knife isn't the one that cuts. It's the one you decide not to use. The house was quiet now. No more late-night phone calls. No more wine glasses left on the counter. No more pretending to sleep through the creaks in the hallway. Daniel had moved out 2 weeks ago. No note, no confrontation, just an email from his lawyer confirming the separation terms. He took his suits, his whiskey, and left behind a drawer full of socks and silence. Lena never came back for the rest of her things. Her perfume still lingered on the pillow of the guest room, the one she used to crash in when she was between places. That scent used to feel like nostalgia. Now, it just made my throat tighten. I spent most mornings with coffee on the back porch, wrapped in the cardigan Mrs. Grant gave me for my 32nd birthday. The yard was overgrown. The lavender bush needed trimming. The tomatoes had gone to seed, but I didn't move. Didn't fix, didn't reclaim, because part of me was still waiting for something to begin again, even if I didn't know what. They say, when the fire burns out, all that's left is ash. But what they don't tell you is this: sometimes the ash is still warm. One afternoon a letter arrived, handwritten. No return address, just one line on the envelope. For when you're ready. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Lena's handwriting. You were right, about everything. And still, you didn't destroy me. I don't know if that makes you weak or stronger than I'll ever be. Either way, I'm sorry. Not for the affair, but for never letting you stop being the better sister. I stared at the paper until my fingers cramped. Then I folded it and burned it in the sink, not out of hate, but because I didn't need it to survive anymore. That night I found myself in the attic, the one Daniel always said we'd remodel one day. I dragged out a tarp, an old easel, and a box of oil paints I hadn't touched since grad school. I started to paint. At first it was nonsense, blurred colour, angry strokes. But then shapes began to form. A dock, a shadow, a figure alone in a boat. Not me, not her, just someone afloat. Trying. I saw Mrs. Grant a few days later. She poured us tea and gave me the once-over mothers do when they're checking for signs of collapse. You look thinner, she said. I'm lighter, I replied. She nodded. You did what you had to do. Did I asked. I think so. And if I was wrong? She smiled, but there was something sorrowful behind it. Then let the next right thing make up for it. Later, I passed Lena's old high school. I hadn't planned to stop, but I did. I sat in my car across the street and watched kids pour out the front doors, laughing, shouting, slamming locker doors. So much noise, so much life. I thought of the letter again. I'm sorry, not for the affair, but for never letting you stop being the better sister. Maybe that was the truest thing she ever wrote. And maybe she was wrong. Because if I had been better, I would have forgiven her long ago. I didn't call her, but I left a key under her old doormat at her apartment, just in case. That weekend, I finally boxed up Daniel's things. Suit jackets, still smelling of cedar and ambition. I taped the box shut and dropped it at his office. Told the receptionist it was personal. I never looked back. He never called. That was fine, because the thing about fire, it clears space. And sometimes, that's enough. People think revenge is a straight line, that it ends with victory or ruin. But the truth is, it ends in something quieter, something more human, a new breath, a softer kind of peace. Not forgiveness, not forgetfulness, just release. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a character in someone else's story. I felt real. 1 year later, I live by the sea. Not the dramatic storm-lashed kind from romance novels, just a small, quiet inlet outside of Savannah. The kind of place where the birds wake you before the sun and the grocery store cashiers know your name before your second visit. My house is modest. 2 bedrooms, wood floors, wide windows that catch the light just right in the afternoon. There's no more lavender garden, no fireplace, no marble countertops, but there's peace. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough. People ask why I left Charleston. I tell them it was too noisy. What I don't tell them is that the noise wasn't outside, it was inside me, and I needed to hear my own breath again. I teach part-time now. Art workshops for women in recovery. Some of them come from domestic violence. Some from addiction, some just from hard luck. They paint like their lives depend on it. And maybe they do. I don't talk about my past. But sometimes I catch myself watching one of them lost in brushstrokes and colour, and I see a younger version of me. The girl who thought if she stayed quiet long enough, no one would notice her breaking. Daniel emailed me once, short, formal. Hope you're well. Just wanted to say I've accepted responsibility. The board pushed me out. Probably for the best. No hard feelings. I didn't reply. Not because I hate him, but because there was nothing left to say. We weren't unfinished. We were over. Lena wrote too. A postcard, oddly enough. Just one line. I'm in Mexico. Learning to breathe again. Hope you are too. No return address. I didn't need one. I smiled when I read it. I still have it tucked between the pages of my sketchbook. Because some things aren't meant to return. They're just meant to be remembered softly. I still have moments. Dark ones. Flashbacks in the shower. A tightening in my chest when I walk past certain kinds of perfume. But I let them come. Let them sit beside me for a while. Then I let them go. Like birds on the wind. Some evenings, I walk to the shoreline with a cup of tea and a worn-out notebook. I write letters I'll never send. To Daniel. To Lena. To the girl I used to be. Sometimes I apologise. Sometimes I don't. But always I end them the same way. I am still here. Because that's the victory, isn't it? Not revenge, not justice. Just surviving. And learning how to live after the war is over. Even when the peace is quiet. Even when the house is still. Even when the person looking back at you in the mirror is someone you're still learning to love. If I've learned anything, it's this. Some stories don't end with slamming doors or shouting matches. They end like tides pulling away from shore. Soft, relentless, honest. So, this is my ending. Not the kind you clap for, but the kind you feel long after the lights go out. And if you remember me, if you remember anything about my story, don't remember the betrayal. Don't remember the revenge. Remember the stillness, the survival, the sea. Sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who claim to love you most. And the scariest thing isn't waking up alone. It's waking up and realizing the world has already moved on without you. But if this story taught me anything, it's that survival isn't about coming back from the dead. It's about choosing who you'll become after. So now I want to ask you, have you ever felt like the world erased you before you were ready to disappear? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Tell me below. Let's stop pretending we're fine. Let's start remembering we're still here. If this story found you at the right time, you can stay. You belong here. And if you want more stories that speak what you've been too scared to say out loud, you know where the subscribe button is. No pressure, just truth.